The Koolauloa Neighborhood Board District extends from Waimea Bay down the Windward coast to Kualoa Point. Encompassed in this area are the communities of Sunset Beach, Kahuku, Laie, Hauula, Punaluu, Kahana, and Ka'ava. This 25-mile strip of coastline is accessible by one winding highway which connects the communities within it and shows off the beaches on one side and the Ko'olau mountain range on the other. This is what town people call the country. The communities here are small and rural, and many people who live here are involved in planning efforts to determine the future of this area. We talked to several people who have ideas about the future of Ko'olauloa District. The first is Howard Geiger, a 30-year resident of Ka'ava. We asked him about problems which he thought might affect the future of his community.
We do have problems with our taxation in the area. Let's say we take a place like Kahala or some other place where they have taxes almost equal to ours. They have streets, sewers, and all of the entities of a developed subdivision. Ka'ava has none of that. We have, you might call paved roads, but they're not of the type which would be considered as a regular subdivision development. We don't have sewers, we have cesspools, and things like that. We do not get the money out of our tax dollars as other areas because our streams are not kept clean. Our city and county passes the buck about cleaning our streams, and when we have heavy rains, we have flooding. And I think that our tax dollars are not buying as much as what we should get.
David Nod, president of the Ka'ava Community Association.
Yeah, I think most of us that live out here in this community would like it to stay pretty much like it is. After all, we've moved out here because we like this lifestyle. It's, you know, it's rural lifestyle, but then we're close enough to town to have anything we need from Honolulu in a very short time. It's a nice, quiet community. It's an area where they have very low crime rate. We don't have too many problems. Juvenile delinquency is not a problem out here. It's kind of a nice place to raise kids. Most of us would like it to stay this way. We're not really anti-development. There are probably a lot of vacant lots in the community that could still be utilized for more development for people who want to move into the community and to live this sort of a lifestyle. I don't think one thing we don't want is them going over here and building 6,000 or 7,000 housing units next to us, and that would just disrupt this lifestyle no end. It'd be just like moving into Honolulu, and we'd rather stay away from that. I think this is not only true here in Ka'ava. I think this type of lifestyle could be said from everything from Kahalu to Waimea Bay on this side out here. That's why most of us live out here that are permanent residents, because we like this rural lifestyle and we'd like to see it preserved. I think the next 10, 15 years are going to be really critical in preserving this type of lifestyle. If they let things happen in Waiho'oli, Waikani like Mr. Powell and Mrs. Mark want to happen, and then we can only assume that the next thing would happen in the Ka'ava Valley, and we just don't want that sort of development.
This is Kathy Mattoon, who is an active member in the Punaluu Community Association.
Well, I guess the one issue that affects all of us, and we can't avoid it, is that highway, that two-lane highway. It joins all of us, and whatever happens in one community is affected by the other.
I think traffic problems are relative to what you want. Now, this is not a high-speed highway we have out here anyway. It's a 35, 40-mile-an-hour highway, and that's fast enough for most of us, and it carries along our traffic. It's more crowded than it was 15 years ago, to be sure, but it still doesn't take that much longer to get to town. I think the worst thing we could do is widen the highway. Then we really would have traffic problems. They would have an excuse for all this development. I think I'd like to keep the highway kind of like it is and keep the speed limits at 35, 40 miles an hour, because that's part of our lifestyles too, moving slow.
Ishmael Stagner, a bishop in the Mormon Church, instructor at BYU, and longtime Laie resident.
I'd like to see an improvement in the roads, basically because they're dangerous. And if we have any more population, we're going to have to improve the roads, not necessarily in terms of a super highway, but at least to the point that, we don't kill as many people as we're killing on that poor little roadbed of Kamehameha Highway that we have now that was built in 1923 and, is not going to be able, rather isn't able to handle the traffic now and certainly isn't going to be able to handle it if we add 7,000 more people, which is what the general plan envisions for this area between now and the year 2000.
Kathy Mattoon talks about the Windward Regional Plan.
I would say that for the Koolauloa area, it seems to be in the right direction, that we wanted rural, we wanted controlled development, like replacement housing, housing for the needs of our communities, limited number in population. We were a little bit disappointed, I think those of us who reviewed it, to see that Laie, for some reason, is going to be considered urban. As I had said earlier, we recognize it as being an educational center, cultural center, but not a resort type thing. And we would like to see what agriculture they have continue. They have some great taro patches back there. And that portion, I think, disappointed us rather heavily. In Punaluu, we've been quite heavily affected by high-rise, something that we had been opposed to for a long, long time. The lifestyle was affected here in that we all knew each other very well in the small community, and suddenly we have 300 units of people who are really transients, non-contributing type of person to a community. They could care less about contribution to the hospital or the fundraisers that we have. These kinds of people in the community have changed our lives completely.
Is there a problem with housing here now? It's a small community still, and you seem to have continuing in-migration to the community.
Oh yeah, there's a continuing and a very serious problems. I'm a bishop in the community, for example, and we have, in some instances, homes in which we'll have 20 people, maybe 3 couples, for example, with their attendant children. One couple will be in one bedroom, another couple in another bedroom, another couple in the third bedroom, and all of the kids sleeping in the front room or in the garages or wherever they can find a place to sleep or eat. And housing is difficult over here because the people who want to live here are basically the people who cannot afford to live here quite often. The rents for this area are really quite high because housing is in such demand, yet the bulk of the people, 70% of the people here either are connected with the college or the PCC. And the average family income, for example, is about $9,000, but the average home rental in this area, if you don't own your own house, is over $200 and closer to around $400. For a family that's living on an income of about maybe $9,000 a year with 6 children, almost half of their income will be just simply their take-home pay after taxes and everything else is going to be going for rent, which means that unless there's supplements like food stamps or everything else, they're going to have problems.
Do you imagine that people who are now living here would be tempted to move into other communities in order to get housing?
Oh, I don't see any way that wouldn't happen. I think that people would go where the housing would be. I think a lot of the people would probably move to other areas of the Windward Coast or the North Shore, but most of them would probably prefer to stay close to where the jobs are and where the housing is, if attached to it could be some type of guarantee that there would still be the preservation of the lifestyle that they like.
Kahuku has housing problems too, although slightly different from those of Laie. Junior Primaccio, head of the Kahuku Housing Corporation, explains the housing needs of this former plantation town.
Vicky, the city plans to build 300 units, single-family dwellings, in the area back of the hospital. Now this area, we focused that good if 100 Kahukuans would be residents or homeowners up there. The rest would either come from our neighboring community, Laia, Hauula, or Sunset Beach, in that areas. We hope that we can take care of the need of Kahuku first. We know that because of federal funding, because of cities' involvement, discriminatory practice cannot be held out here, and no preference can be given. We may seem kind of selfish, but I think as leaders of this community, we gotta take a selfish attitude to accommodate our problems for this community. And it's eminent that we take this kind of position, because if we don't, we're going to end up another Ota Camp or Waihole Waikani. And rather than falling into those categories, we want to be prepared.
The next two people we talked to expressed some reservations about both public and privately sponsored housing plans. The first is Tom Pickard, police captain and lifetime resident of Kahuku.
I like the idea, like I say, I like housing. And, but I like to provide the alternatives, all alternatives. If a guy wants a castle, they're fine. You know, if he wants a two-story house, they're fine. If he wants a one-story house, they're fine. But if he wants just the land there and he provides his own house, fine also. I'd like to give a guy to build his own and within his own means, build a house within his own means. I don't like to have someone dictate values to me. Tell me, hey, this is the type of house you're going to live in, and it's good for you, and that's it. Well, I don't buy that. I don't buy prearranged, organized homes. I like the guy who have some kind of imagination. He can create his own. If it's a grass shack, fine. You know, what's wrong with a grass shack? Go down to Polynesian Culture Center. You see some beautiful grass shacks there.
Don Wasson, a Kuleana landowner in Laie.
I want to be free. I want to live the way I want to live. If I want to live in a shack, I can live in a shack, you know. If I want to live in, in a Samoa Valley or in Hawaiian Valley or, a Hale, I want to live that way. But when things come like this, people look down on my people and look down on me because I live like that. But let me tell you, I'm proud in living in a shack because, that's my people's way, And I don't want to live in one concrete house or one concrete condominium. Because I don't like to talk to the walls. I don't like to talk to the concrete.
Mike Michael of the Bishop Estate responds to those who wish to maintain a rural lifestyle.
Don't talk to me about the good old days. The only thing good about the good old days is they're gone. And when people quit being a little bit nostalgic about the good old days, they recognize that really they're far better off today than they ever were. And do we want to go back to, or do we want to preserve the duck ponds in Waikiki? Well, it'd be completely out of place. And if you go a little in more recent times, how about the pig farms in Waialae? Well, actually, the people who live near there objected vehemently to having all those pigs because of the smell and the flies. So whose lifestyle are you going to defend,
But then the question comes up of who was there first, the pigs or the suburban homeowners?
No, well, that's a good question. Who's first? But where are you going to put the suburban homeowners? Going to build more high-rises downtown? People don't like high-rises. So where do the people go?
Although housing problems are a concern to the people in the Koolauloa district, new problems arise in other areas. John Farias explains the Department of Agriculture's plan for an agricultural park in Kahuku.
An agricultural park is according to the law, is an area of land specifically delineated for farming and for agriculture. It is sanctioned by the state. It is to be used for, first of all, displaced farmers, and secondly for new farmers coming into the area. The law spells out that we need at least 10% new farmers. But most of all, it gives the state and the Department of Agriculture the greatest opportunity, as far as I know, in the recent years, to implement long-term agriculture development in the state of Hawaii.
What can the state do for these farmers?
For one thing, I think we can assist in the marketing of products. We can assist in the cooperative venture of farming enterprises. We can assist in water development and a whole host of things that a guy or a farmer, in the normal sense, they would have to lease land from a private individuals or the state, or purchase land, would have to do on his own. And I think this is a situation where if we put together a viable ag park in Kahuku, we will probably see a model approach towards agriculture development in Hawaii, and if not in the nation.
Well, I like the ideas, the suggestions, the proposals for an agricultural park here. But of course, that doesn't mean I like everything about it. I like to know what's in it. I like to know what's going to happen. Who's it for?
The governor has made it quite clear in his State of the State address that we ought to help the local guy as a top priority item over here. And in our Department of Agriculture, we feel pretty much the same way. We do have a farm loan program where we can lend people capital. We do have a new farmer loan program, again for young farmers coming in. And we can pull in resources from the university and from other areas to assist in the farming enterprise.
Fred Trotter, head of the Campbell Estate, who is working with the state on the agricultural park to help attain self-sufficiency for the people of Kahuku.
I would really like to see it for this reason. I think there are lots of younger ones who are having a difficult time, one, finding a place to live, want to live with the parents. Two, maybe they prefer to work in the field instead of working at a hotel. And so our reason here is really to provide the people with a choice of activities. And it's up to them.
Public parks and public beaches. Everybody is concerned about them. There are several plans evolving now which will affect the coastline. Jean Reynard, Parks Department planner, talks about state plans.
Yes, well, we're in the process of purchasing Malai Kahana. The entire area is being analyzed for its value for parks, and there's a very preliminary plan study made for the acquisition of the entire area. I believe it's about 140 acres, embracing the whole bay and beach. The part that has now been purchased is so-called Cook Point, and lands between that point and the highway.
What about Sacred Falls? Can you tell us what kind of a park you want to put there?
Sacred Falls is an area we have just now purchased, and the planning has not even started. We're in the process of negotiating with consultants now to initiate the planning process. The planning that would be for the lower, more level, developable area. Much of the area in acreage we have purchased is very steep, rugged canyon land mauka, and which we're not contemplating a planning study of immediately. That would be kept as it is now, wild, rough land.
Private plans also exist which could affect the beachfront property in the Koolauloa area. Marvin Stone is the head of Zion Securities, the financial arm of the Mormon Church. He outlines Zion's Laie plans.
We have two large beach properties. One is known as the Kakela area, which is 11 acres down by the Pounders area. The other area is the Hukilau area, 13 acres, located on the north side of our properties in a Kahuku direction. It's our plan at the present time to leave the Hukilau 13 acres in the recreational area for camping, picnicking, community use. It has been our plan in the past to develop the 11-acre Kakela piece into a low-density condominium hotel development, something perhaps 3 stories high, I don't know, several hundred units. That has been our plan. Whether or not that'll change now with the shoreline bill that was passed last year, I don't know.
Oh, in general, we would rather not see development so close to the park that the park serves as sort of a front yard for the development, either for, say, apartments or hotels. So we may be concerned about it, but not really able to do anything about it without also buying that property or buying development rights or some such interest in that property.
Charles Toguchi, newly elected state representative from Heia to Hau'ula.
I'd like to see the state preserve all of the beach areas that we have. I don't like to see any more hotels or big buildings on the shoreline. We've seen this in Waikiki. We've seen this in other areas where when hotels are put up, they put it up on the shoreline, and it's open only to the guests of that hotel. I think if we're going to build hotels and tourist-related facilities, maybe we should locate them inland so that the beach areas are available not only to the tourists but the residents of Hawaii.
There's a totally different idea in park planning taking place down the road in Kahana. The State Parks Department calls it a living park.
It is really unique. There's no precedent in America or anywhere that we know of for the kind of park that most of us envision as a living park, though that itself has not been defined. In general, what is meant, just very broadly general, is that it's a park which includes people within it who in some manner represent a value of themselves. Their lifestyle, their culture represents a value. And as far from a technical planning process, then we are including these people and their culture as a value similar to the plants and the archaeology and whatnot, other values of the valley.
Ron Johnson from Kahana is the past president of Hui Okanani o Kahana.
A living park encompasses not only recreation, but culture and educational forms of recreation here in the valley. I think what the people here would like to see, like for myself, is educational laboratories, if you will, where students can come down from schools throughout the state of Hawaii and come to Kahana and actually see what it's all about and go into the fields of their interest, be it net making, lauhala weaving, or learning to work in a taro patch, or how to restore archaeological sites, for that matter. My interpretation of my lifestyle here is the perpetuation of some of the Hawaiian concepts of the ohana system, kokua, ho'oponopono. I'm still residing here on a former family kuleana, which has been handed down through my family since whenever. For myself, I'd like to be able to perpetuate this concept, bring back everything we used to do before the state condemned it and took it, and make it available so that the children in the schools in the state of Hawaii can come to Kahana and get in touch and actually see and feel what I'm talking about. As far as the other people in here, we have many very talented people as far as Hawaiiana is concerned. We have a lot of Hawaiian people here. Unfortunately, a lot of them are dying off. They're passing away. And we're losing so much every day. The longer the state takes, the less we'll have.
There are things that will have to be done The people themselves have been living in very great uncertainty and in very poor housing. We have had plans of housing prepared for housing to meet modern codes. It of necessity doesn't resemble very much old Hawaii. Anybody could say, well, that isn't the way the old way houses were built. Their housing isn't really in a public portion of the park. It needs to be separated well enough from the public use areas and from the program areas that the people can have their own privacy, and the atmosphere of the park is not disturbed by automobiles and TV and washing machines and things that people will have at their houses, which would really not resemble old Hawaii either.
I happen to believe that living park means that those people should stay pretty much where they are, help them restore or build their houses. But as the kuleana, or the house, you know, the cow in the backyard, the dogs, the taro patch, the graveyard, to me that's a living park Hawaiiana. I will say that I will never allow 21 pole houses to be allowed in Kahana Valley as long as I'm a state senator from that district.
The Parks Department is aware of Senator Anderson's concern with the Kahana housing problem, but feels obligated to get on with the development of a state park in Kahana.
We have no assurance that we can succeed with whatever is meant by the living park concept. If we do not, we'll simply have to relocate the people and develop it as a park and recreation area.
The Koolauloa district represents a way of life to its residents. Many of them have definite ideas about the kinds of communities they want in the future.
We like our rural living. If it means we have to drive a half hour to 45 minutes to a center to work, that's where we want to be. And we want to come home to the chickens in the backyard and the pigs up the street and the wide open ocean line. We are really not interested in having strange transient people running in and out of our communities.
I'm sad because it's our way of life, living off the land, raising pigs in our own backyard, planting and everything and living off the land, and no longer is it in existence. And I don't like that.
I foresee Kahuku town a rural town 10 years from now. I foresee Kahuku town with not too much drastic change, such as Kailua, such as Wahiwa. I can foresee Kahuku town being pretty much the way it is, with the exception of little more heavy traffic in the area.
I think all of us would like a status quo, I've been in Kahaluu Valley for 20 years, and I hated to see Austro come in and do what he did, although I'm very pleased with the finished product if there had to be development. But if you were to ask the Waiholi Waikani people what they want the status quo. If you were to ask the people out in Kahana or Kahana Valley, they want what they've got and nothing more, and all the way out to the coast. But there is going to be a certain amount of growth, controlled, call it what you want, and there is going to be trade-offs. But I believe that the so-called urbanization or the resort or the rural or the commercial can be intelligently. I think for the first time we can even mix, be it a condominium or a resort, with ag or open space. I see nothing objectionable about driving through a agricultural park to get to a high-rise set way back in the valley where it's not offensive or obtrusive. We just haven't tried this new blending or mixing. When these developers go in for zoning, they want everything from mountain to the sea as urban. Those days, I think, are outdated and antiquated. Mixing, blending, how they complement one another is an awful tremendous amount of possibilities, and we've just got to try some of these new ideas.
There seems to be no commonly agreed upon solution to planning, even among those who deal with these problems every day.
I find that a lot of the land is owned by big landowners, and this, I think, is a problem because many times the needs of the people are not met, because it's not the people that decide what the area is going to look like. It's usually the big landowners that determine essentially the land use decisions.
We're going to have to see what happens with the general plan and implementation of the new general plan just approved by the city and county, and as to what is going to be permitted and what can grow out of that. The estate has long-term commitments on that property to attempt to do something with it. The developer must put a deal together that fits in with what is permitted by government, bring it in and get it approved by the trustees. Right now, that whole problem is in a complete state of flux. Agricultural endeavor in that area is extremely difficult. One thing, the land is been pretty well worn out from its use in sugarcane. Another thing is that to try and raise anything else on the land, one puts a great deal of effort in trying to remove the old sugarcane. It keeps growing back up. It's well deep into the soil, and it's a tremendous investment to remove the old cane.
If we can overcome some of this land tenure problems, if we can acquire sufficient acreage for long-term agricultural development, if we can again let the farmer and agricultural community believe that there is permanence in agriculture, then my wish is that we're going to see agriculture develop in that whole coast once more.
Joe Powell and Mrs. Marks have their own plans for their own valley. Zion Security have their own plans for their own property. Campbell Estate has their own plans for their own valley. Bishop Estate has their own plans. None of them really care about the other landowners. Each estate or each large property owner is only concerned about maximum density and a profit or a return on their investment and their density. What we've got to do is to bring those 6 or 7 together and plan it as one. Now, there may be land banks, there may be pooling of urbanization where Joe Powell may find himself part of a land hui or a partnership or a bank of development of Kahuku or Laie. But in the same token, his land in Waiholi might be open space, agricultural, etc. The Windward Regional Plan envisions all sorts of new concepts and new ideas that maybe haven't even been tried yet. But somehow we've got to bring those 6 together and not let them independently develop their own valleys. Those days have been tried. Consequently, we have Enchanted Lakes, we have Leeward Oahu, we have Hawaii Kai. And I don't think we can allow them to go their own independent ways.
Senator Anderson has always got a lot of profound statements to make about what should be done. Quite frankly, and I think he's right. There are serious problems in doing that, because when you get all the big owners or companies together, a lot of little people are going to wonder what's going on. And my own feeling is that while Senator Anderson is suggesting it, we're doing it. We're gotten together with our community. We have a dialogue. We have a plan which we are trying to change. The plan we have is really not perfect. So we've started it. We've been carrying it on. It's been very frustrating. You have to start the longest conversation with, 2 people. But you have to have a plan. The fact that this side of the island doesn't have a plan, there's no excuse for that. And I guess that our philosophy here at Kahuku is that we own all this property. Right now we see this town as having some problems, particularly the people in the town. And I think our objective is to try and work with the people to make this community whatever it is they want. We have some ideas, and they have some ideas. And sometimes we don't always agree. But we think that in the framework of our discussion and our communication, and the fact that we can speak openly and honestly with one another, that in the long run, whatever this community is what the people in this area want.
Living here is no comparison, if you compare with the past. There's never any time I can recall that anything is nice and as warm as the past. You tend to remember all the good things when you're younger too. You were carefree, everything was free, movements. You could go to the oceans. I'd like to have my grandchildren, my sons, to see what I saw when I was younger. You're not going to see it anymore. Where you were free to move from ocean to mountain. And, people were much more open and free and talk to. You could walk down the street and you can say hi, and, wave, and you know the person. Now they look at you like some spook or something. Now you gotta lock your doors. No, the past. You can't bring the past back. You're gonna have to cope with what's happening today. And I don't know what the answers are. I really don't know. But I'm sure that there are answers. Maybe some wise man will come someday and get all the people together and say, hey, what are you fighting for, Maybe this is not the right way.
Major funding for this production was provided by the Hawai'i Committee for the Humanities and the People's Fund.